Get ready for your unofficial dental hygiene podcast. These are the tales of two hygienists, one East Coast RDH and one West Coast hygienist. Listen as they tackle the profession of dental hygiene with humor and enthusiasm. Now, please join Michelle Strange and Andrew Johnston as they tell you a tale of two hygienists. So listeners, we have another great episode planned for you in partnership with Crest Oral-B. And today we have Beth Jordan on, and we're going to talk about toothpaste. Is toothpaste, right? Like there's no difference?
Well,
I'm so excited for this. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having
Beth.
me, Michelle and Andrew.
Absolutely.
So let's get into it. Let's talk some toothpaste. Do we really need it?
Well, most patients look to toothpaste for freshening their breath and cosmetic benefits like whitening their teeth. Some even understand that it's fundamentally for cavity protection. But I might ask you the same question after I say a couple things. I might toss it back at you. Just as cell phone and computer technology changes, you don't drive the same car you did 15 years ago. Believe it or not, toothpaste technology changes also. And as dental professionals, when we treat patients, our goal is to customize treatment so they can achieve overall health. So as part of that, we evaluate their hard tissue, we evaluate their gingival health, and something that's common to both hard and soft tissue disease is plaque biofilm. So knowing that, and knowing that the foundation of good oral health is biofilm control, we typically look to mechanical means like hopefully an electric rechargeable toothbrush, interdental cleaning, and all these mechanical means to accomplish this biofilm control. But patients aren't always great at mechanical plaque control, especially when it comes to hard to reach areas, marginal areas, and proximal cleaning. So they leave this biofilm behind to become dysbiotic and causes the onset of an immune response, an inflammatory response for soft tissue, and then for hard tissue, it's caries. And there are toothpaste now in technology where they treat the biofilm that's left behind. They treat the gingivitis. So knowing that biofilm gets left behind and toothpaste can treat that, and it's not even a habit change, it's just a product change to things patients are already doing. I'm going to ask you, do you think toothpaste really matters?
Yeah.
Well, let me answer your question with another thought that really almost doesn't actually really go together, but it's going to go together. You'll just follow my journey. We'll get there together. So podcasts, love podcasts, listen to podcasts all day, every day. Just today before this interview, I was listening to a podcast, Two Bears, One Cave, if anyone cares what the podcast was called. And there's a comedian on there who has the worst home care habits. And he talks about it all the time on the podcast. So he's on Bert Kreischer calling him out. He's got the worst home care. So what he always says, he and his comedian buddy that's on it, Tom Segura, talk about toothbrushing, how often, when, because Bert's way wrong and thinks that he is supposed to brush once a day and it's not till noon and all these other things.
Sounds like a train wreck.
And then today, first of all, he also tells about how many dental problems he has, and it's fitting. It makes a lot of sense. But today he's also talking a little bit about some of the mouth rinses and things like that. And they're talking about that they use it for fresh breath. And when you were talking about the car that I drove 15 years ago, I was thinking, you also think about some of the advertising and some of the things that we've been told by our parents and some of the things that were quote unquote true 15 years ago. Those are also not true today.
That's a good point.
So not only has the technology changed, but our whole mentality, what we're exposed to, what we're being taught, sometimes we don't change with it mentally. Like Bert Kreischer, who has terrible home care. Sorry to call him out on the show. But so I think, yes, I think it matters. I think it matters that as science evolves, as we are learning more about the oral systemic link, I think the things that we put in our mouth to use as our toothpaste is important.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that because I really feel like, dental professionals, we're slow changeovers, and it's hard to move the needle when we play old tapes or things that we learned in school. We really take to heart, and that's how it was, and that's what we learned. But like you said, all the technology has changed, and it's really come a long way. And believe it or not, even for toothpaste.
I think it's interesting though too. And Michelle and I talk about this a lot, but it's interesting that the things that we learn in school 15 years ago, 20 years ago, are the things that we think are gospel and that nothing else can be true because we learned it from a textbook that was also 15 years outdated. So it's 30 years outdated by now.
It is. I think it's a pattern. And I think, by some it's recognized. And I think it's important that, we at least just pay attention to that and be open to new ideas and new technology. We also have to be able to evaluate the literature that goes with that technology, right? So that's another piece of the puzzle. Like, there's a lot of new technologies that emerge, but what we need to rely upon is evidence-based learnings. And a lot of times there just isn't enough evidence to make a say one way or the other. That's just how it is in dentistry.
I would agree with that. For sure.
So I think one of the things that people push back on these days, and rightfully so in some ways, some things are way too chemically, there's just too much. There's like a lot of things happening to a lot of our foods. And so when you read the back of a label, because I'm a big label reader, there's a lot of ingredients that sometimes sound really scary. And so I'm just curious, like, what are the ingredients that are typically in toothpaste, and like, what are they actually used for?
That's a great question. There are active ingredients and there are inactive ingredients in toothpaste. And again, it's really important that these days as dental professionals that when we pick up that tube of toothpaste and we look at the back of the box, we know what the ingredients are, what they're doing in there, and not just based on ads or claims, but really like their mechanism of action, like how they work. Because there's multiple ingredients that can treat sensitivity, for example, but their mechanisms are different. So let's talk about like inactive ingredients. Those are things like humectants, binders, colors, flavors, surfactants, and many of those are creating attributes in the toothpaste that really have our patients enjoy the experience of brushing. Like, seriously, you can't underestimate the importance of the user experience to toothpaste. If you make a recommendation and your patients don't like it, they won't use it. And so whatever therapeutic benefit it offers really doesn't matter. If patients like what you recommend, they're likely to brush longer. I've met hygienists, again, going back earlier in my career, who recommended dry brushing. And I know this is a podcast, but I'm making a yuck face emoji. I couldn't do it. And I know there's been a couple of studies that have included dry brushing as a control. And patients rate their experience negatively, or they literally drop out of the study. So patients who like the product that you're recommending, that's when it's best able to deliver the best therapeutic benefit, because they'll use it and they'll use it longer because they like the flavor. They're not trying to get it out of their mouth too quickly.
Well, and I think that's what we see, compliance. Compliance is the name of the game of dental hygiene in prevention,
so true.
Right? So that they have to be something that they enjoy.
So let's go back. So those are some inactive ingredients, but the active ingredients are where you actually derive a therapeutic benefit and where the mechanism of action comes into play. So, for example, sodium fluoride, the only benefit that you get from a sodium fluoride is caries prevention via subsurface remineralization and preventing demineralization. So you can then add, say, a potassium nitrate to that. The potassium nitrate is depolarizing the nerve. So now you have a cavity protection and a sensitivity toothpaste. And actually, this is where Stannous fluoride is really unique, because Stannous fluoride provides, the subsurface remineralization and the prevention of demineralization, but it also provides erosion protection, plaque and gingivitis protection, as well as occluding the tubules. I try to describe it this way as far as the different types of fluorides. It's way oversimplifying the chemistry, but it kind of just paints a picture. With sodium fluoride, the sodium carries the fluoride. The fluoride is therapeutic for anti-caries, but the sodium really doesn't do anything. But with Stannous, the Stannous carries the fluoride, and the fluoride is therapeutic for anti-caries. But it's the Stannous that occludes the tubules for sensitivity. It's the Stannous that binds with the pellicle to protect the enamel. And it's the Stannous that treats the biofilm. So it really is a different way to look at the chemistry of toothpaste and the active ingredients.
It's very interesting. But I feel like that's very, I mean, this is a hygiene podcast. I feel like that's very anti-cavity and sensitivity centric. We talk a lot about biofilm on this program. So how does that then correlate to the biofilm?
That is my favorite question ever. The way Stannis works on gingival bleeding is really interesting because there are three main ways that Stannis helps the soft tissue, reversing gingivitis and bleeding. So first, it's bactericidal, but it's mainly bacteriostatic. In other words, it kills some bacteria, but mostly it deactivates the biofilm in a way that allows for balance that helps the body that heal itself. So the second mechanism as a bacteriostatic agent is that it's able to slow the metabolism of the biofilm. So the impact of slowing the metabolism of the biofilm is that you get less bacteria and less of the metabolic byproducts of that metabolism that cause the inflammation. So it's not just the bacteria, it's the byproducts of the bacteria that are causing inflammation. The third way is also anti-inflammatory. Stannous is known to bind to lipopolysaccharides. Lipopolysaccharides, or LPS, is a short-chain fatty acid metabolite which triggers our immune response. So, and because Stannous binds to this type of toxin, so Stannous binds to LPS. Because Stannous binds to this toxin, the toxin can't bind to the receptors that would trigger our immune response. These are called Tolllike receptors, or TLR. These receptors look for invaders, and when they recognize them, they trigger our body's inflammatory response. So the net result is less inflammation and therefore less bleeding and gingivitis. In fact, in a recent meta-analysis that was published in the Journal of Clinical Periodontology in 2019, it looked at the gingival benefits of crest formulations of Stannous fluoride toothpaste and demonstrated that specific formulations of Stannous can decrease gingival bleeding in patients by 51% over a 3-month period. That's like equivalent to if you got compliance when you asked your patient to floss. After 2 weeks, you'd see a similar reduction of 51% in that 2-week time. This translates to having a 3.7 times better odds of shifting to gingival health after a 3-month period. I think your patients would love to know that just switching their toothpaste translates to chances of getting healthier by 3.7 times more than a regular sodium fluoride toothpaste.
Nice.
Well, Stannous fluoride seems very on trend these days. Like, when I first started, again, when we go back to like what I learned in school was Stannous fluoride stained, and that wasn't an ideal ingredient in some of our toothpaste. So like, what's the new trend with Stannous fluoride?
It's so funny that we all learned this same alliteration in school. Again, however many years ago we went to school, Stannous stains. So yes, a lot of companies are coming out with Stannous fluoride now. It's just such a multi-beneficial ingredient. They are all proprietary formulations to each company. So every company has its own formulation. So while they're all Stannous fluoride, the FDA regulations call for a 0.454% Stannous fluoride by weight. However, having said the formulations are different, the chemistries are all very different. And believe it or not, Stannous is very finicky to formulate. It's hard to bring out its most bioavailable form. Stannous is only therapeutic in a plus chemistry. So going back to chemistry 101, it wants to be neutral. So it's always looking for something to bind to. The trick is to make it bind to be stable, but also to release it to make it bioavailable. So some chemistry formulations hold on to the Stannous too tightly, others not strongly enough. You can kind of think of it like a bodyguard or maybe a magnet. If it holds on too tightly to the Stannous, the formula is very stable. However, it's not bioavailable to deliver a therapeutic benefit. If it holds on to it too loose, it's not stable, but it binds with many of the other chemistries that are in your mouth or in the toothpaste, and it can't get to be delivered all the way to where it needs to go into the biofilm to deliver that therapeutic benefit. A uniquely formulated or chelated formula that Crest has just the right magnet where it holds on long enough to the Stannous to deliver it for an exchange chemistry to where it needs to go to deliver that therapeutic benefit that penetrates to the depth of the biofilm where it can neutralize the most virulent toxins up to 4 millimeters below the gum line, in a paste that doesn't stain and with a consumer preferred taste and texture. It's a lot of chemistry that goes into toothpaste. Go back to the staining piece, since that's all we ever really learned about it. And sometimes we tend to play those old tapes without understanding, again, the technology changes. I guarantee that every formulation of over-the-counter Stannis on the market has stain inhibitors built in. There are definitely some people that may be more prone to staining than others, but they will stain to all kinds of things more readily, coffee, wine, etc. But there are some really cool ingredients that do this, and like everybody kind of uses their own thing. But one of my favorites, it was largely misunderstood. It's called sodium hexametaphosphate. Again, back to our chemistry 101. But you could think of it like a salt. So it couldn't be formulated with water. And most toothpaste are high water content. But this chemistry, this particular sodium hexametaphosphate chemistry became part of the pellicle to prevent calculus and stain. And it was kind of crunchy. So most people thought it was abrasive, but it was like a salt and it dissolved right away. So this was a chemistry to prevent and disrupt the pellicle to prevent calculus and stain. So it's just very unique. Most of the time we look to mechanical abrasives to do the whitening, or we look to chemistries like peroxide. And this was a very cool ingredient, but largely misunderstood by the profession.
Yeah, because and I mean, we did, like you could always see, like you had a patient that used Stannous fluoride way back when, and they had just a little bit more staining. So it's really nice to hear that is changing, because obviously we're all very aesthetic.
That is for sure. And anyway, who wants to recommend something that the patient comes back and there's stain on their teeth, like they're disappointed. They're maybe disappointed in your recommendation because you might have recommended it. So to have the confidence to be able to say, to know that what you're recommending, your patient's going to love and they're going to enjoy using and get the therapeutic benefit that they want.
Mm-hmm. Before we go to the next one, is the RDA specific to Stannis, or is it specific to gum detoxify?
It is specific to none of them. I'm talking about it as, in general, it's RDA of all, like toothpaste in general, the category.
Okay. So a lot of times we talk about RDA values, and I would love if you could cover a little bit of that and why is it so important?
Well, that's a question we get a lot about the RDA. There is a lot of misinformation about this topic out there, and I have really taken the time to understand this topic for myself. The misconception, it's really logical. It seems intuitive that the lower the number, the safer it is. And some companies even market to this. But that is not what RDA tests are at all. It's not a short and sweet answer, but I'll make it as easy as I can. So first of all, RDA stands for radioactive dentin abrasivity. The RDA is a laboratory test that toothpaste manufacturers use worldwide as a means for standardized comparison of toothpaste in a lab method. The RDA method has been developed by and accepted by national and international organizations like that of the ADA, the International Standards Organization, ISO, and many standard institutes. And it gets relooked at every however many years. So what they use as a guide is an RDA of 250 corresponds to a dentin loss of 1 millimeter in 100,000 strokes. So this means, again, it's a laboratory test. That means that toothpaste with an RDA value less than 250 are considered safe for a lifetime of normal use with a sufficient safety factor built in. And there is no evidence that there are levels of safety. So gradations of low, medium, high abrasivity are not taken into consideration in this laboratory method. The ISO organization has confirmed this and maintained that under 250 is the target. Their latest update was 2010. You can kind of think of it like an elevator. So your elevator has a capacity of 15 people, and you're either at capacity and then next passenger can't get on, or you're not at capacity and the person can get on. So you're either at or not at capacity. So it's an in vitro test, and it's not predictive of in vivo or real life tooth wear situations. So, for example, first of all, the protective benefits of the pellicle on the tooth can't be understated. And secondly, this is a test on dentin, not enamel, though there is an RE test, a relative enamel abrasivity test. Also, this lab test doesn't represent real life brush contact time, the brushing behaviors that play a role. And actually, most research on toothpaste abrasivity that have been conducted on people in vivo or in situ, like patients who wear a retainer with an enamel chip in them, show that there is no significant difference between groups who use like an RDA of 90 or an RDA of 204. Like no statistical difference can be found. Okay, so that's the first thing. Two other things to consider as we consider hard tissue safety and evidence-based dentistry. One is that it's really important for toothpaste to have some abrasive added. If they didn't, they wouldn't be that helpful for actually cleaning the tooth surface. The other thing, and even more importantly, we get so focused on RDA that we lose sight of the primary reason for a loss of hard tissue, whether it's enamel or dentin, and that's erosion. The food and beverage that we're drinking softens the hard tissue and makes it really easy to wipe it away. Erosive tooth wear is more prevalent now because think of all the sports drinks and energy drinks we're drinking. Plus, we're living longer, so we have our teeth for so many years longer than we ever have. So that's another benefit that Stannis fluoride offers that sodium fluoride doesn't offer, is this protective factor. Stannous becomes part of the pellicle to protect against mineral loss or demineralization. Stannous has been shown to protect against tooth surface mineral loss better than a prescription strength sodium fluoride. And how that works is because sodium fluoride is good at subsurface remineralization for caries. At a prescription strength, it's the product of choice for someone with caries risk. But for erosive protection, Stannous fluoride deposits that stannous oxide or stannous fluorophosphate layer within the pellicle, and it really protects against loss. So it's really more preventive for erosion patients.
So what I've understood from those last couple of bits that you're saying is that I can have Stannous fluoride and then drink all the Red Bull that I want.
No.
Gosh,
We all have our breaking points.
I think we have the science that proves it, though. I think you actually cited some things that we can look at a little bit later on to make sure that that's true.
I did right? Put some references in there.
See? Boom.
But not the Red Bull. It's not all the Red Bull that you want.
Andrew,
I would go back to Michelle's
just
water.
start brushing your teeth with Red Bull and let's call it a day.
Yeah.
Just.
And then I can get all my implants done, and then you can teach me how to do implant maintenance.
Exactly.
Is that what's going on? Okay. So, big question is, why should we, as dental professionals, recommend a very particular toothpaste for our patients?
I think it comes down to, patients look to us as the experts. So if we say I have a patient in the chair and I say, well, as long as it has the ADA seal and you like the flavor, right? We're not really serving our patients, and we may even seem unhelpful. So think of it like this. I'm going into my doctor. You go to your doctor. You have a really bad cough, and the doctor says, go get something in the cough and cold aisle. We want a better solution than that. I know I would. And the doctor also wouldn't say, well, I like the purple pills, right? They don't bake their recommendation based on what they like.
So
yes.
That's what you should use.
So the doctor might say something like, look for an expectorant like a tussin, or look for something with dextromethorphan like a DM to suppress your cough. An even better recommendation is something specific based on your symptoms. You know what, Andrew, go get Robitussin DM. It will help. So our patients want the same thing. Sometimes we're afraid to make a branded recommendation for fear about how that's perceived. Most patients don't understand that what you're handing out from your drawer isn't just the freebie a company gave you, but that you actually chose this for them based on their therapeutic benefits. We, I think, have to do a better job of really communicating that. Otherwise, again, we're just kind of trying to feel like that what we're handing them is the recommendation, and they don't know it's not just a freebie that you didn't get. So I also think in that vein, it's kind of recognized as a practice builder, because you're naming their state of health and almost like prescribing, it's not a prescription, but you're prescribing a treatment for them. So, you know, Mrs. Jones, you have gingivitis. I'm recommending a product that treats gingivitis for your home care. It's an easy swap for the paste that you're currently using. I think most patients appreciate your guidance and the recommendation when they're faced with a wall of toothpaste at the supermarket. And they'll be reassured every time they brush, knowing that, you know, that the paste is working and that you made the recommendation that's customized to them.
I have always used the verbiage of prescription when I go through home care. You know, I'm prescribing to you this style of toothbrush because I'm concerned about this area of your mouth. I'm prescribing to you this interdental brush because of X, Y, and Z. Prescribing this particular anything to really kind of empower me as a professional. And because I can't prescribe opioids, I can't prescribe antibiotics, and I don't want to. I want to prescribe the things that actually are going to prevent the issues, but I also want my patients to take it serious. And when you say prescribe, I'm going to prescribe to you today, it's like a light bulb goes off for them of how important it is that
it's so important. Our language, the words that we choose are so important. And again, going back to technology changes, even the words that we use in the operatory have changed. You know, like the word prescribe, like trying to talk about supportive periodontal therapy instead of like, you know, scaling the teeth even. All of our words have changed in the operatory. So it's just another opportunity to showcase what we can do therapeutically.
So I have a question that's going to seem random, but are you supposed to rinse or leave the paste in the mouth after you toothbrush?
Quick and short, you're supposed to leave the toothpaste in your mouth after you brush. I mean, that you'll get more benefit than you would if you rinse. But that is one of those habit changes that you'd have to move mountains to make people do. It's just so ingrained for people to brush and swish. But if you think of a way to put that message on a billboard, you let me know.
It is one of those things that I get more pushback, not from my patients. I feel like my patients have more respect for the information that I deliver to them. It's my friends and family that have zero respect for my knowledge. And I try to explain to them, I'm like, stop wishing afterwards. You're just swishing all the good stuff away. And I'll say, though, it doesn't say it explicitly on all toothpaste, and so they always push back with me, and I'm like, well, let me go to the source. Let me find out if I'm supposed to swish or leave it in there. So I'm glad to know that I am correct, and my family doesn't value my opinion as per usual.
And you're right, though. Also, it's not on the instructions for use, right? So there's you know, from a manufacturer's point of view, there's only so much real estate on the box. And something like that, you have to make choices, what goes on there and what doesn't, I guess.
Way to go, Michelle. Way to bring it back about you being right about something.
I mean,
that's so good.
And also my value.
What are you right about today, Andrew?
Opinion. Friends and family. I mean, when somebody actually comes to me for any advice, I'm like, oh, I do know. I do have that answer. How do you want an Excel spreadsheet for that? Like, I got stuff for days, and they're like, no, I just needed one recommendation. Could you not be a freak about that?
It's so funny that you say that, Michelle, and that's why this conversation is interesting. No one puts that much thought into their toothpaste. You know, it's a really long bridge from kind of like all toothpaste are the same to where we can acknowledge formulation and chemistry just differences, new mechanisms of action. People just don't put that much thought into it.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I would say, like, you brought up the kind of like the buying habits of like some people, and that is definitely something that I found very fascinating as a hygienist working in a corporate environment, better understanding the retail side of consumer products and how our patients, which are ultimately consumers like we all are, how they purchase. And it's, you know, last time I had mint and now I want whatever else, or it's buy one, get one free, or my husband has the blue one and I want the green one. And it's really trying to educate our patients that okay, that's fine. Get the color that you need because, yeah, we don't want you sharing toothbrushes accidentally. But ultimately, there is a bigger thing that we want you to look at and really consider and think about when you're purchasing those products. And it's not that, you know, you had a coupon, even though that's important, and I get it, especially for some people, and especially when it's a double coupon. I don't know if that's a thing anymore, but once upon a time, there was like these double coupons, and you'd save some decent dang money. And I get it, but also it is a changing your verbiage, like we were just saying, and prescribing it and really teaching the patient how important it is to use very specific things for their level of disease in their mouth. And I would just to piggyback on my rant here would be that it's so important to educate them that their needs change. So obviously they're not using kids' toothpaste anymore, right? Like they're not using a kid's toothbrush. They're not using the kids' brushing stroke that we might have taught them. You know, now they're 40 years old and they just got a crown and bridge, or now they're 60 years old and just got an implant bridge. And an implant bridge and a crown and bridge, different beast. And so things are going to change, and we really have to make sure that they understand that they can't go to that toothbrush aisle or that dental aisle in the pharmacy anymore and just be like, well, that's what I've always used. Your mouth is different.
Well, it's not fair though, because I mean, and we talked about this with Stephanie on the last podcast, but we cannot be shaming our patients for not understanding, because in addition 100%. To all of these things, that is natural habit. We have like the best minds in marketing saying you need to have it at eye level. You need to have it at, I mean, there are so many shopping habits that have been analyzed to death that they almost don't really have a chance except for whatever we can, you know, prescribe for them. It's like we really need to be clear, kind, patient. Again, clear with our recommendations or our prescriptions with that.
And I think, you know, as oral health becomes more important to like whole body wellness and that kind of a thing, there are people that understand that I do want to keep my mouth healthier, and you know that they do seek out products. They would ask, oh, what's the best product to keep my mouth healthy? You know, so even people who have a healthy mouth, sometimes they're more engaged in wanting a health product and wanting the best for their oral care. So a lot of times we think of, you know, these gingivitis patients and treating the disease in their mouth, but even healthy patients appreciate a recommendation because they're looking for what can keep them healthy.
Mm-hmm. So, well, this has been fantastic. Are there any other things that we might not have asked that we need to tell our audience?
I think I would say if there's one thing that, as we said, that technology changes, and just I would really highly encourage you to look at the products that you're recommending or prescribing for your patients. Understand that toothpaste can play a role in maintaining gingival health and detoxifying the plaque biofilm. And so recommending these products to improve patients' oral health is all of our goals. And I know that we're here to help you along the way. So next time you advise your patients on a home care routine discussing brushing and interdentals, remember that despite their best efforts, plaque will be left behind. So recommending highly bioavailable stabilized Stannis fluoride toothpaste can help to manage that plaque, decrease inflammation, and research shows there's more than 50% reduction in bleeding over 3 months. So this translates to 3.7 times better odds of shifting to generally healthy mouth. Keep your eye on your patient's results, and just remember that toothpaste matters.
So thank you so very much for spending some time with us. That was great.
Thank you for having me.
If someone wanted to reach out and get some clarification or maybe get some of the research that you were talking about, how might they reach you?
Well, my email is jordan.ba.1@pg.com. And we also have Instagram and Facebook, and we have an amazing website, dentalcare.com, for your continuing education needs.
Awesome.
And we'll link those references and all of that in our show notes for everyone.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.